Wayne, it's been a few months since we've had you on. Thanks for making time again. Ryan and I got a lot of questions here. But the one thing that we are seeing now, and I noticed it last week when I was on holidays, and what a holiday it was. But we're starting to see the youth sport hockey players now committing to NCAA programs.
Correct. Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me on. Always good to chat with you guys. And yeah, it's been kind of a crazy time. I mean, if you don't like what's happening in the NCAA world today, just wait till tomorrow. It's going to change. And certainly the most recent change, as you cite, is the youth sports guys committing. And, this has been in the funnel for a long time. And, with the ones that we worked on, I mean, have been since, probably late January, February, kind of in those discussions. And then once the NCAA compliance period opens April 1st, it was shortly after that the majority of these youth sports commitments were actually made, but just not made public.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing there. So maybe you can clarify for us too that there's no transfer or wait out time. They'll be able to go and be active right away as part of this new agreement.
Correct, and it's all under the standard NCAA rules. Players have a 5-year academic clock, so to say. That still applies, right? So from the first time you enter school full time, you have 5 years, and of course you have 4 years of eligibility. And there's a lot of just different interpretations of the rules of when you're playing youth sports. Does that count a year for a year, or is it different? And we can get into some of the discussions, but end of the day, there's some general rules, I guess, and everybody is looking to kind of look for the gray areas that you can kind of beat the system, and some lawsuits pop up, and that's what's really happening.
I love the gray area.
Yeah,
let's find the loophole. Okay. So let's say Wayne, player has played 2 years for University of Regina, University of Saskatchewan, U of A, whatever. He's played 2 years. Now he's got an option to go play University of North Dakota. Wants him. He goes to the University of North Dakota. Does he now have 3 years of NCAA left?
No, it should be 2. If that player was in college before his 21st birthday or didn't play a junior game past his 21st birthday, because NCAA rules, you lose a year for that. But let's just say in theory he was did not play a junior game past his 21st birthday. It would be a year for a year. So if he played 2 years of youth sports, he'd have 2 years of NCAA left because there's 4 years of eligibility. Now, that said, there is examples of players that have played 4 years of OHL, the Ontario Hockey League, then played 4 years of youth sports and are signed to NCAA this year. So I just went against what I just said as the rules. But there's another caveat that comes up, and it's called the Diego Pavia ruling. And Diego was a quarterback. I think it was West Virginia, maybe. No, Vanderbilt is where he was a football player. And he was at what was called junior college, and so like a 2-year college. And so he argued that should not apply 1 year for 1 year because he had no opportunity to collect nil, name, image, likeness. And so that suit went through. And so my understanding is the player I cited from the OHL used that recent ruling to allow him to get another year of NCAA.
It's so interesting to me because growing up in the time that I did and then into the junior coaching world, the NCAA used to pride itself on no gray area. This is the rules. These are the standards right
that's
here.
Good point.
And now it feels like they've created a whole bunch of gray area with nil, with transfers, with this new ruling. In hockey specific, obviously lots of controversy in football and the way guys transfer and when and follow coaches and all that stuff. So I don't know if I have a question directly here, but it's interesting that it's created a lot of this gray.
What my question is now, and I don't even know if this has changed, but I'm probably people out there. NCAA, let's just go this. We're talking hockey. NCAA hockey now. What is the oldest a person could be playing NCAA hockey?
Well, counting the 21-year-old rule because your clock starts at 21.
21.
So it would be 26. So 5 years from 20, so 26. But I've also heard that there's some people challenging that ruling, that the academic clock ruling. And I mean, to Ryan's point, ultimately what's driving all this is lawsuits. And so you guys would understand as well as me, football, basketball are the big revenue generators for NCAA. Some of these rulings have come through those sports and, been transferred to hockey. Yeah. But also there's been separate hockey lawsuits where, what I've been hearing through the grapevines is that the NCAA doesn't want to, lose a massive lawsuit in hockey and have it impact billions of dollars in football or something. Right. So they're being a little bit more flexible is what I understand in hockey, because for them, it's not the big money game.
So I think we'd all be on the same page in understanding that this is great opportunity for the player. I haven't heard anybody since this ruling has even rumored to it being confirmed to today that anyone out there thinks this isn't great for the individual player. But how do you feel about the impact of these junior leagues? I would have a hard time having anyone convince me that this is a good thing for the Western Hockey League when arguably, I'm not going to break it down, but arguably their best 10, 15 players have left to the NCAA. Now we see it at U Sport, and teams like the U of S and the U of A that have been perennial powerhouses lose a chunk of good players, again, to great opportunity for the player. Now the trickle-down effect of Junior A, losing those guys up to Major Junior that were fringe guys, and that's just going to continue to trickle all the way down the system. So do you see a point where this levels out, or is this just the new era of the hockey world?
I think it's short-term pain for long-term gain would be my analysis. There's obviously going to be a lot of churn and chaos here. It has started since November 7th when this happened, and as advisors and agents, it's made it crazy for us. But ultimately, I think it's going to be good for the WHL too. I mean, obviously, short term, they're losing some of these big names. That's painful. But at the same time, they're gaining, big stars out of the BCHL and AJHL that would have never come to the WHL.
So or the American kids. The American kids, 100%,
right? 100%, Barney. And I think I seen a stat recently at the OHL. They drafted, I think, over double the normal number of Americans this year in their OHL draft. So they're now going after those high-end players because everybody wants to come up to the CHL now. So those American hockey players are going to fill those spots. I think the people, it impacts most in the short term, it might be players that are, maybe that 2004, 2005 age group that were in the BCHL, had commitments to the NCAA, now are getting pushed back or bumped. Yeah. And I think, that's what I was putting some analysis online that, sure, we see all these WHL players, CHL players going to U Sports. That has an impact because somebody's getting bumped. Mm-hmm. Now, I've always kind of joked with my clients is that, nobody ever announces their decommitment on Twitter, right? But it happens all the time. And so, it's interesting to look and see what players are getting bumped. And I'm sure you've seen the big news out of, Nebraska, Omaha, bringing in 15 new players. Well, there's a ton of players that were, either decommitted themselves or the team kind of said, hey, go look for a new team because you're not going to be here next year. So massive turmoil. And I think the biggest impact has been on, Junior A players. So BCHL players, a few AJ players, some North American hockey players are the ones that are getting hurt most by that.
Yeah, and Omaha is one of those teams that's loading up, from what I see, on the little bit seasoned, let's call him, like the is Trevor Wong?
Trevor Wong.
Right. Your boy, University of Saskatchewan. Yeah. These guys have played Western Hockey League. Now they've gone and played CIS or U Sport against men, guys that have kids, and now they're going to go back and play NCAA. I see it. Omaha's going to have an experienced squad.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what it's come down to, Barney, is that, nobody was kind of expecting that decision really on November the 7th. And when it came, they're in the middle of the season, so they're busy running their teams. Nobody really had a lot of extra time to kind of give thought, okay, what's our strategy going forward on these new rules? And I think that's where Omaha, to give them credit, they basically said, hey, we're going all in on this strategy. Yeah. Sent their guys out. You guys start scouring for Western Hockey League players, U Sports players, OHL players, and let's stack together a team of 22, 23, 24, 25-year-olds. And, it's going to be interesting to see. I think there's going to be a lot of press on that team because it's kind of going to be called the U Sports team. But there's also going to be pressure on those guys because in some way they're going to be expected to win because it's going to be kind of, the masters against the school kids. And to your point, I mean, there's a big difference between a 19-year-old played in the Western League and a 24-year-old that's played some U Sports against men. And my best example, being from Saskatchewan, it was Trevor Wong. I mean, he destroyed the Western Hockey League. Next year he goes to U of S. He really struggled early, and I think Trevor would admit that, right? Because it's a big adjustment. You can't just fly by these guys now, and they just put their big trunk of an arm out and kind of stop you, and it's like, okay, this is over. So, and again, by the end of the season, he was doing unreal.
And then the rumor today is all over social media, and you and I were talking about it, is Gavin McKenna, and it's the Penn State again, and it hasn't been confirmed by him. And you brought up a good point, RP, which is a lot of this. You still need to have your grades. Mm-hmm. Still got a clearinghouse. Yeah, SAT's probably still in there at some point. So maybe it's for Gavin McKenna, he just doesn't have the scholastical ducks in a row.
It could be. And I mean, I don't personally know Gavin's situation, but I think that's another thing that has always been something of a misnomer where people said, if you're in WHL, you're dumb. NCAA smart. And in the old day, there was something to that. But, you look at some of these WHL kids, I mean, they're 90, 95% average students and tons of them. And so I think that's going to partly change how people think of, CHL players. They think, well, they're just stupid. The only reason they went that way is because they, can't do their ABCs or something. But there's a lot of scholastic kids in the WHL, CHL in whole.
Okay, my last question, though, is how does it work now? Because let's say Cole Reshny, Victoria, shout out Macklin, is he's committed to, is it UND? I think.
Yes.
He said he's going to.
Yes.
Now he gets drafted. NHL, who drafted? Oh, the Flames. So now, if the Flames sign him, can he still go NCAA? Or I understand he's got to go back and play junior.
Right. He wouldn't be able to go to the NHL and still play NCAA. So it's still kind of the thing. I mean, an NHL contract is going to eliminate you totally. But there's still ambiguity around East Coast Hockey League contracts, maybe even American Hockey League contracts, based on how long you played, how much you earned. Yeah, there's a lot of things. And I mean, you open a can of worms about the whole NHL, CHL agreement as it relates to NCAA players, right? Because an NCAA player, they have until he graduates from college to sign him. If you're a CHL player, they only got 2 years to sign you or you become a free agent. Yeah. So say it depends when you got drafted. Were you a CHL player when you got drafted or were you NCAA? And so they're working out some of those rules, same as the scholarship programs. There's lots of issues, right? So, let's look at the WHL. The kids earn a scholarship. They should still deserve payment of some sort, in my opinion. And we're talking to the WHL about this right now. But many of these kids are going on to NCAA schools where they're getting full rides and more. Because, they're getting nil money. They're getting Alston's funds. So they're putting money in their pocket. But, the argument is the kids still earn that money, right? It's not like he's on a pro contract. He's not. Yeah. And so I don't think the WHL is necessarily fighting this. They're just trying to figure it out. It's all just so new. They really don't know because nobody expected or anticipated. So there's nothing in the verbiage of the contracts to cover this.
I love it. I could sit here and talk about this all day, but we're getting Curtis, tell us we got a break. Wayne will have to do this. We'll maybe catch up again in August. So much to talk about. Thanks again for doing this.
Appreciate you guys having me anytime. Okay, take care, guys.